Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Yeah, so today I've been thinking about, for the past couple of weeks, pretty intently, about photography as art. And first, let me say that, photography, the history of photography, it had a rough time. If you've studied the history of photography at all, it's pretty clear that photography had a tough time becoming recognized as an art form. Originally, it started out as like a tool to record loved ones, things like that, and as a reportage tool to show people what it looked like in other parts of the world. Because, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, let's see, photography 1800, 1900, let's say, okay, 120 years ago. A lot of people, most people didn't really get around much. They stayed pretty close to home where they were born. So there wasn't a lot of travel going on. And so photography was able to show people things that they'd never see. And photography showed them a more real representation than an artist drawing, I guess. I mean, it was assumed that that was the case. And so, but Stieglitz started the photo gallery in New York and kind of got photography established as an art form, as a fine art, quote unquote. And so the problem with art has always been that it's subjective. And it's kind of like pornography. And Justice Thurgood Marshall, who said, "I can't define it, but I know it when I see it." And that kind of applies to art in general. Not that pornography is an art, but you get the point. And so, so photography had a tough time establishing itself as an art form, as a fine art. And it's a cycle, right? I mean, Ansel Adams established himself as a fine art photographer, and then his work was commercialized. And the commercialization, the posters of Ansel Adams photographs is what made him famous. Now, was he famous in art circles before that? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess so, right? In the fine art circles, I think he was, because he had gallery shows going back to the 1930s, 40s. Okay, but he didn't become famous until the 80s. And I think, as the story goes, there was a marketing guy. Might have been his brother-in-law or something. I don't know. I'm making that up. It's been a while since I've read the biography. But it was a marketing guy who said, let's take these. I mean, Ansel was in his 70s, in the later part of his life. And the marketing guy said, let's get these out there, get posters going, And the only thing Ansel Adams insisted on was that that it wasn't cheap knockoff posters, that they were the highest quality reproductions that could be made. And rightly so, good for him, But the sad truth of the matter is, it's easier to become a rock star than a well-known photographer. I mean, I know I can name hundreds of rock stars, and I'm not even that into rock and roll, right? Or rock, or, But, you listen to radio, and so I'm sure I'm sure it'd be very easy for anyone watching this video to name off 25 famous musicians that play contemporary music. Let me put it to you that way. And by contemporary, I mean anything that was made in the last 70 years. But if you're watching this video, you're probably into photography. And if you're into photography, you'd be hard pressed to name 5 photographers. Famous photographers. I am. I'm not even going to try, but I'll give it a shot. Ansel Adams, obviously. Michael Kenna. Galen Rowell. Alfred Eisenstadt. Cartier-Bresson. Not bad. There's 5. You know, photographers that have achieved some widespread recognition, right? I mean, there's your YouTube stars, but it's not quite the same thing, is it? I mean, Christopher Burkett has gallery representation. I mean, if you go up to Ansel Adams Gallery, Ansel Adams' website, okay, he has the Ansel Adams Trust has a website. And there's like 20 or 30 photographers represented there. John Sexton's one of them. But let's say there's 25 people there. I've heard of maybe 5 of them. And I've been doing this my whole life. So, you know, to make it, to be famous as a photographer, I mean, that's like becoming a legend. That's like becoming, I mean, there's lots of rock stars, but the next level would be like Led Zeppelin, right? There's rock stars and then there's legends, okay? Well, any photographer you've ever heard of that's out in the public domain that's famous like that's legendary status, you know. And then it drops off quickly, and then it's like you're just a, you know, hack. So, I mean, Michael Kenna, who has achieved a certain level of fame, most people have never heard of him. You kind of have to be a photographer. I mean, people who are into photography, like my photography club that I'm running here locally, like I'll mention, nobody's ever heard of him. And these are people that are kind of into photography. And Michael Kenna is one of the more famous ones. So yeah, it's a tough slog, you know, and digital didn't do photography any favors. All right, all digital did was dumb it down even further and make it so that, you know, you didn't even have to commit to it. You just, you know, spend $1,000, get yourself a good camera, and off you go. All right, and then you've got, you know, moms looking for second incomes. They all became wedding photographers. Now, with that in mind, how do I assess my success over my lifetime in photography? Well, I think I did pretty good, okay, in the sense that I've been able to feed myself using photography for my entire, you know, since 1985. So that's a you know, that's a successful career in photography. My fine artwork has been hit and miss, okay? YouTube has helped with that. The problem I have is I'm not so sure that digital prints are fine art. Okay, I mean, that's a hang up I have. Here's the color hay roll that I'm working on, and little subtle changes, right? I like this one better, but you know, this is actually straight out of camera JPEG. I just wanted to see what it could do. It's okay. I mean, this one's better. This is not straight out of camera JPEG, although this is a JPEG with a few tweaks to it. But what I'm going to do, I like this image, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert it. I'm going to convert it from the raw, pretty much straight up, and turn it into a 16-bit TIFF file using Capture One, and then bring it into Affinity and mess with it. So that's pretty much my workflow there. But the digital print, I mean, you know, interestingly, the digital print is archivally with the pigment inks on the good paper pretty close to a properly processed fiber-based darkroom print in terms of longevity, which archivability was the issue. So when I say pretty close, I mean Wilhelm Institute or whatever it is rates the gold, the fiber-based darkroom print properly processed is the gold standard, and they're giving it 300 or 400 years of aesthetic quality. Now, Ansel Adams said 1,000 years of aesthetic quality and 4,000 or 5,000 years of informational quality, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know where he got that information from. I would think the Wilhelm Institute would be a little bit more accurate, as not because Ansel was wrong, just because Ansel was using the data from his era, and the Wilhelm Institute is modern testing. It's all kind of a guess. I mean, it's good. I mean, a lot of people, I get comments when I say stuff like that, like, what do you tell, well, who cares if as long as it lasts, 50 years, I'm good, right? Well, not if you're making fine art, right? I mean, if you're making fine art, when I make a fine art print, I make it to the level where I expect it to be around 500 years from now. Why? Well, hopefully it's worthy. I don't, the time will tell. But if I don't make it to that standard, and 100 years from now, let's say it does become something special, and it fades, like what the hey, assuming society doesn't collapse in the meantime, which it probably will. History repeats itself. That's not doom and gloom, that's just realism. I mean, it doesn't continue, nothing continues. It's cyclical, historically. So yeah, so if you don't make it to that level or that standard, if you don't have the standards, well then you don't stand a chance at all, right? Of having a legacy of a fine art portfolio that lasts into the ages, right? But so I'm starting to get to the point where I'm thinking that the darkroom prints and the and like the hemp paper, and even the Moab juniper and the Hahnemühle burita, but the hemp paper, I just like it aesthetically. If it's archival to like 350 years and the fiber-based is 400, I'd say that's close enough, The trick is again, dry mounting it to the museum mat board and matting it and framing it and, going through it, etc. So, yeah. And so I have, I think I'm going to pursue both. I enjoy the darkroom. I will say that I'm pretty certain that, again, I keep coming back to the Fujis and the APS-C. As I said in the last video, I've done like 20, 30 prints. I mean, I've got prints everywhere. Okay, and I just did those prints for the church that were 30 by 40s, and they were all APS-C, and they were fine. I mean, they were as good as I could hope for, a 30 by 40. So digitally APS-C, like, I'm good. There's really no need for a full frame. I enjoy the SLR, but the lack of video features and efficiency of and redundancy, and at the end of the day, the full frame just really isn't necessary. All right, I mean, this was the XT3 shot this. And I know it's small, but I have no problems. This could be a 30 by 30, no problem. So what, and I'm talking about fine art. I mean, my standards are very high. Am I bragging? I'm not bragging. I'm just saying these are the standards that I hold myself to. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm photographing for 500 years from now. Why? Do I really think my work's that good that it's going to stand the test of time? No, I don't, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm not the judge of that. Okay, all I can do is the best that I can and hope. And if it makes it, it makes it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if I don't try or I don't do it or I don't have those standards, it'll never make it. right? If you don't, it's like the lottery. You got to be in it to win it, right? Well, if you don't buy a ticket, you're definitely not going to win. You're probably not going to win anyway, but at least buy the ticket, right? I guess. Or take all that money and save it and put it in a savings account. So, but yeah, so that's kind of my motivation for why my when I say stuff, that's where I'm coming from. And a lot of people who watch this channel don't understand that, and that because that's not where they're coming from. And I get that. If you're just here for the gear reviews or find out what I'm shooting, or because you think I'm crazy or whatever. But yeah, I've spent a lifetime as a craft photographer making a living, shooting weddings and portraits and senior portraits and things like that. And my passion has been the landscape fine art stuff. And at this point in my life, I've transitioned over in the past 5 years or so to full-time landscape fine art. And so that's where I'm coming from. That's what I'm doing. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I'm so picky. It's got to be the best paper, the pigment inks, the darkroom prints, the Ilford multigrade fiber base, etc., and archivally processed. I mean, I watch those prints for 2 hours to make sure that they're archivally processed. So, and then I wash them again when I tone them. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, just thought I'd share that with everybody. The art of photography or fine art photography, it's a different thing. It's a different level. It's a different whatever. That's where I'm coming from. I mean, some things establish themselves right away. Like what I find is interesting, like take Ben Horn, for example. He's established himself as a fine art photographer because he's shooting an 8x10. And that kind of just gets you on the map. And I totally get that. Okay. What's interesting is it's color, and his output is all digital. So all his prints are digital. So in a way, the real fine art is in his exposed sheets of film, right? I mean, I guess if there was a process to take those exposed sheets of 8x10 film and turn them into darkroom prints, color darkroom prints, although with the color darkroom prints, there's always been an archival issue. All right, so the digital printing of the color prints, I mean, yeah, it's a hybrid kind of a deal. Now, are those digital prints fine art? Yeah, they are, but I mean, they're not Christopher Burkett's Cibachromes. Right, he was a Cibachrome printing master, pretty much the only person that I know of that ever mastered that process. And the Cibachromes were a different thing, right? The 30x40 Cibachromes had an archive. The Cibachrome print had an archival life, or have archival lives of 300, 400 years. I mean, they were archival. So it's important depending upon what you're shooting for, right? So like I said, I'm shooting for 500 years. Whether the prints make it to stand the test of time, that's up to the world to decide, not me. But if you don't do it at all, you don't stand a chance, right? So yeah, if that makes any sense. So I'm curious, I mean. For me, that's the pinnacle of where the obsession, it's beyond a passion, it's an obsession, right? So it's an obsession to make these fine art prints to the highest level I can make them. And I guess I'm obsessed, and that's it. So, hey, I just thought I'd share that with everybody. It's been on my mind. Hope you find it interesting. If not, well, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave a message, check out the prints, buy one if you're so inclined. The box set's going to be interesting this year. I like the color. I'm working on the color of this hay roll. I like that. So yeah, this is the better one. So I'm still working on it. So anyway, Have a great one. We'll see you out there. Thanks for watching. Bye.